Hey there, it's Louisa from The Moment. Now, usually our shows are live. It's usually me sat here and Carl, my husband, sat here. But we're actually having a day out of the studio. And instead, what I'm bringing you, or what we're bringing you, is an interview with another television host from New Reality TV. Now, today, I have had the pleasure of speaking with Daniel from the show, The Past Life Regressionist. Now, I have to say, this is something that I really love to investigate. You know, earlier in my career, in my 20s, I trained as a hypnotherapist and later as an NLP coach and a timeline therapist. So, you know, I'm used to going backwards and forwards and examining stories and things. So I have to say there was some career-based curiosity. I really wanted to pick Daniel's brains and find out a little bit more about his approach to clients, his approach to consciousness, what he's learned from doing the job that he does, for instance. So this was one conversation and it's actually spread out into two. So this is part one. I believe part two will be tomorrow on our usual slot. So sit back and relax and you can learn more about Daniel. But before I bring him on, I just want to tell you a little bit about his show on New Reality TV, just to give you a bit of a taster. So on newrealitytv.com, it says, join Daniel, the Past Life Regressionist, on an extraordinary journey through time and consciousness in this explorative series on New Reality. Each episode takes you into the transformative experience of past life regression, where individuals uncover hidden memories, heal emotional wounds, and explore the profound connections between their past and present selves. So I've already spoken to him and I can say this is an absolutely laid back connection between us. We do laugh and giggle quite a bit. And I hope you enjoy it. It's very, very candid and takes us to a whole new level. So anyway, I'm going to bring him on now. Hope you enjoy it and catch you in part two. Hey, Daniel, nice to meet you. Thanks for coming on the show. How you doing?
I'm good. Thank you for having me on, and thank you for the formalities. I mean, I always find it funny when someone says, "Oh, it's nice to meet you," and act like we haven't been talking for the last couple minutes.
Yeah, we've been like chatting and swearing and all sorts offline, haven't we?
Yeah, dropping the big 4-letter words and stuff we're not going to say.
No, that's fine. Well, that's good. So we're on a nice informal basis right off the bat. That's great. So tell me about like what you do. Like, how did you get into it? Like, not many people wake up and think that they want to study QHHT. Can you talk to me a little bit about how that happened and so on and so forth?
Well, I'm not one of those people who woke up and thought I'm going to study QHHT. It's something that I made it. Like, I have a podcast called Time of Spirituality. Of course, I have to do the shameless plug right now, and also check out my show, The Past Life Regressionist, on New Reality. So I made a joke about this in one of my episodes on Timeless Spirituality, how I took a career test when I was like 22. And it said park ranger.
Okay.
Which even at the time, like, I'm not gonna be a park ranger. But there was no option for Past Life Regressionist on that test.
No.
But even at the time, I don't think that would have lined up with me when I was 22. If I scored as Past Life Regressionist, I would be like, what? What's a past life? No, come on. Someone actually does that? No. No. So for me, it really goes back to my own experience. And around that time when I took the career test, about a year earlier, I came down with some health issues. And I'm someone who's incredibly rigid and stubborn. So I put all of my faith in Western medicine. Okay. And after years of no movement, I'm like, I think I got to bite the bullet and try some of this alternative stuff. I have to look at.
Oh my God.
And, you know, it started small, just going to an herbalist and things like that and applied kinesiology. And then past life regression just happened to fall in my lap at a certain point. And I thought it was fascinating. And this was in my late 20s at that point. And I was just fascinated by the idea, but I'm like, can it really be? Can I can't indulge in this. No. So it was something that I had to sit on for a little while. Yeah. And at a certain point, I'm like, you know what? Let's do it. I'm going to jump in and I'm going to have my first session. So it wasn't even about being a practitioner. I just had my first session and it changed my life. Admittedly, it didn't heal me, but I'm glad that it didn't. I know that sounds weird, but I think it would have been too simple, because I think the path is what's been most important. And the most profound thing that happened for me that day was a shift in my perception of the world around me. I am someone, like I said, very rigid and stubborn. So I can't just flip to a knowing right away.
Yeah.
But beliefs are easier to get on board with, in a sense, even though I know that some people will go to the grave with their beliefs and never change them in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
But I became a firm believer in past lives when I walked out of that experience.
Wow.
And I literally walked away saying to myself, I now believe in past lives. By default, I then believe in future lives or other lives.
Yeah.
So next time it could be better or it could be worse. These are the cards that I've been dealt this time around. So how am I going to play them? And that's really what changed in my life at that point, because when I looked in the mirror, I no longer saw like this sick person. It was, oh, Daniel, you're this sick person. No, this is a real thing I'm dealing with, but you're more than that. So it was that perception shift. And I have to deal with this thing, but I can make the most out of it. This doesn't have to be everything. So I still have 2 legs. I can still walk. Instead of looking at a walk as something that was going to be horribly detrimental, I looked at it as, well, prior to that, oh no, if I go for a walk that's too long, it's something that's going to drain me and hamper me for a long time. But that shift happened in the perception of me then saying, okay, yeah, but what's the alternative? Not walking? So I got to deal with it. But if I don't go out and take that walk, then I'm never going to go out and take that walk. So I need to look at this differently, not just, oh no, this isn't real. No, it was real, but just that shift in perception. And I started looking at everything differently. And of course, I wanted a lot of my friends to go have the experience, the ones who I would talk to about it, because I was very tight-lipped about it.
Like how, I mean, presumably a lot of your friends would have been quite similarly rigid. I know lots of friends who have very, very firm beliefs about how the world is and so on and so forth. And they're not really people that have the conversation about astrology or spirituality necessarily, unless they are like real hard, this is how it is in spirituality. But even then, I tend to not like venture into those areas myself. So that must have been quite a culture shock around you. You know, like, did you start seeing your relationships differently?
Just when I started indulging in those things? Is that what you're saying?
Well, no, just like off the bat, like if you're starting to see the world differently, presumably all of your interactions, the people in it, the situations you find yourself in, not just your health, but everything must have kind of changed somewhat.
It did. And I mean, it's one of those things I even say reluctantly, because I think what's also part of the journey is getting to this place where only this life matters. I know that sounds incredibly hypocritical coming from a past life regressionist, but it's horrible for business too. You think, oh, don't worry about the past, just worry about this life.
Yeah.
I think the pendulum's, it really swings, and going over too far to one side or the other can be detrimental. And I mean, if we want to go down this rabbit hole right now, I mean, I'll totally go there. And
yeah, let's do it. Take me wherever you want to go.
I ended up carrying a lot of weight around also at that time, because over the course of the first year before I got certified, I'd had a couple regressions, and I wasn't really seeing anyone that I knew. And it made me feel very alone at the time, because I'm saying to myself, well, there's this concept about people coming to Earth for the very first time. Could I be one of those people? And therefore, am I here all alone? Do I not have histories with any of these people? I think that was a detrimental way of me looking at it. And it ironically made me feel very alone. And then, of course, years later, I was like, oh, no, I've had many lives with these people. Yeah. And, how foolish I was to to paint myself into this corner or this box of, oh no, you're here for the first time. And I think that experience also helped really get me out of a this is the way it is type of mentality. Because I think when you come around to these concepts, the trap that I found myself in when I would read something in a book from someone who, quote unquote, you know, put it in quotes, knew more than I did, was, oh, this must be the way that it is. Instead of, there are many variables at play that could affect this, or maybe they don't have the entire picture and are presenting it as an absolute.
Yeah.
So I felt very alone until, astrologically speaking, when the great eclipse of 2017 came around, which is a couple years after my first regression. I can talk astrology here, right? Yeah, cool.
Yeah, sure, of course.
So it hit very close to my descendant. I mean,
Right.
within a degree or two.
Mm-hmm.
So it affected the way, I mean, I think this is also, even in astrology, when it comes to, you think of that seventh house.
Yeah.
And it's the romantic relationships. It's the way you approach these things. I mean, I know it's more than that, but I think everyone automatically goes to just partnerships.
Mm-hmm.
Well, what
it's also our projections. It's what we're projecting into the world, I think, as well.
I think I was pretty good about not projecting this stuff. It's not pretty tight-lipped at the time still, but there's all like internal stuff going on too.
Yeah. Yeah.
But the way that it really hit me was it affected the way that I looked at one-on-one dynamics. And that happened as a result of me seeing, oh, I was wrong about one thing that was completely unrelated. So where else have I been wrong? Something that I thought so firmly about. Yeah. And then it happened to go right to that, the way that I viewed those interactions. And I no longer saw, oh, you know, you're here alone. It's like, oh, do you have so much more to learn and experience? And this will probably unravel over the years, but just stop thinking you know it all. Yeah. That was my long-winded way of getting to there. But if you back up a couple years to why I jumped into past life regression and QHHT specifically at the time, for the few people that I did tell about it, I wanted them to go have the experience for themselves. But I live in Los Angeles and we are notorious for our traffic and it taking a very long time to get places. So when I told everyone where it was that I went, which was not very far away, but to them, it's like, I don't want to drive that far. That will take me a really long time. So part of my motivation was to bring that experience to the people that I cared about. Because, okay, if you're not going to drive out there, then I'm much closer, so you can come see me. Another reason I did it was because the past life regressionist who I was working with, she encouraged me to do it. And I've always had tremendous respect for her. I still do to this day. And I've even told her this. A little bit of my motivation was also, I want to go through the same process that she went through to see if this is a load of crap. And if I'm being tricked.
Yes.
It wasn't. She did something else.
I love the way you think, Daniel, because like talking about astrology, I've gone through moments in time when I have stopped it very suddenly and questioned, is this all in my mind? Am I making this up? Is there any use to this? What's the purpose of this? And so I do think it's important to look at what we do from all different angles and really examine it really, really truthfully. I love the fact that this whole process has opened you up to what sounds to me like a lifelong curiosity, like this curiousness about sort of discovering new avenues, new thoughts, new things, new perspectives. How did your friends react to it? The ones, your first friends that you introduced it to when you qualified yourself?
That was the biggest shocker of all.
Really? Why?
Initially, when I would tell someone about it, I would beg them not to tell anyone that I was doing it. My fear was that if I told them and they didn't experience the process for themselves, they would tell people I was doing voodoo.
Right.
If they went through the process, I was okay with them talking about it because I knew that they could accurately articulate their experience to the extent that they felt comfortable. But the biggest shocker of all was that people were more open to it than I ever thought they would have been. People that I thought would have been incredibly close-minded to these things were more in the closet spiritually or metaphysically than I ever could have pegged. And I ended up doing a lot of sessions with my friends in that first couple of years. It got to the point where I could have been in a room with a bunch of them, like my big extended group. And I may have done sessions with 2/3 of them or 3/4 of them. And I'm just sitting there in that room saying, why won't you guys talk about it? I know no one else in the room knows about this, but it's our little secret. Don't worry, I won't say anything. But that was the biggest shocker to me, is that people who I thought would have been very close off to this weren't. And I realized that I wasn't the only one who felt this way, that I wasn't the only one who thought that I'm the only one having these thoughts and not talking about them. It was a lot of people. And that's what I think even the first couple of years of being a practitioner showed me, is that it's people across all walks of life. And even, not to get political, but in my mind, I thought it was more lined up, past life regression and metaphysical was more lined up with a certain ideology. But then I came to understand, no. Yeah. This is not just one set of people that does this. It's people all across the spectrum, which just, it really shocked me, because I thought, I had an idea of another, area of people that I thought would be like, oh, never open to this. But they were. Yeah. So I couldn't believe just the scope of people that had an interest in this field and this exploration, and just seeing they were just like me and just afraid to really talk about it initially. So I think it was just shock to that response of getting a more positive response. Now, that doesn't mean I haven't gotten negative responses before.
Yeah.
There was one time I just remember someone who I didn't see in a couple of years ran into them at a birthday party. And the second I told them what I was doing, they got so uncomfortable.
Really?
And just didn't want to talk about it. That was just, no, can't talk about it. It's like, okay, cool. But overall, just pure shock, just the openness. And it really just showed me, you never know what'll happen if you put something out there and the effect that it can have. Because, and not to say that I'm some amazing healer or anything like that, or that I'm the best there is. I'm pretty good. Let's just call spade a spade. But there's also that way of looking at it. If I want to put myself on my own pedestal, and by the way, I'm being a little sarcastic right now. Just, I hope everyone's picking up on that. My ego is now.
Are you actually sat on a pedestal or something?
I ain't got one across my room right now. But there's also kind of, if you want to look at it this way, those friends who I did help. Now, I can never definitively know that they wouldn't have sought this out themselves.
Yeah.
Or that the experience wouldn't have dropped in their lap at some point and someone else would have been there to help guide them through the experience. But what I can say definitively is that if I didn't bring it up with them, then it wouldn't have happened when it happened. And some of my friends were really helped by the process. And that happened as a result of me opening my mouth and in taking that risk of alienating myself, basically, and becoming just very ostracized, because I felt like I ran that risk. Well, are my friends going to completely kick me to the curb because they're going to think I'm a nut job? They probably already did, so that's just another story. Yeah. But this would just kind of pile on top of it. And shock, that was it. And just showing me that if you take that risk, you never know what the payoff is going to be. And I think I did help them. And I do relate that to me taking that risk. So that's my very long-winded way of saying to anyone who's listening right now, you never know the impact that you're going to have when you take a risk. Period.
That's brilliant. I mean, I've obviously got quite a few questions bubbling up here in my brain. And Yeah, one of them is like, what's your greatest learning since you've been doing your job? But before we go there, I actually want to know, how long did it really take you to, from start to finish, to out yourself and be a fully, like, work full time as a practitioner? From when you had your first session.
Full time as a practitioner, I was doing that probably within 3 years.
Wow.
Fully outing myself took 4.
Yeah.
That was by circumstance also.
Mm-hmm.
And that was because of the pandemic.
Right.
Because I spent years, being in Los Angeles, I'm very fortunate that this is a city that is very open to these things. So it's not like I was in some very small sheltered town.
Yeah.
And who knows what would have happened if I was in that town and said one thing and then got the ball rolling. But
yeah,
you had a lot of people who were very open to this type of thing. So I could go to the grocery store and say something to one person, and I may not do a session with them, but they know someone who's into that type of thing.
Yes, I'm sure.
So when the ball got rolling in that sense, it took a while, but then when the pandemic happened, I had no choice but to put myself out there into the world at that point, because I could no longer go to the grocery store and have those conversations. Yeah. Or people weren't going to let me into their homes to do a session because, got to keep away in that proximity. So circumstance was ultimately forced me to do it and put myself out there in the world of social media.
Yeah.
And therefore put me out there to the world as a practitioner. And then there was no hiding it at that point.
Exactly. One thing I noticed for myself with the pandemic, like narratives that like spread right the way around the world, was all of a sudden lots of people wanted to know what life was about, and to contemplate things from all different perspectives. So yeah, my practice came on in leaps and bounds during that time. So I'm not surprised to hear that from you. I love this. I'm guessing, because I also know that you love astrology. So I'm pretty sure you love observing patterns and recognizing patterns and noticing systems of thought and this, that, and the other. What patterns have you noticed coming up in terms of past lives or consciousness? Are there certain groupings of past lives that you've encountered that are like coming forwards? Are there similarities? What's on your radar, I guess, is what I'm asking.
It's tough to tell by sessions alone, because I think everything is tailored to the individual. The only thing that I can do at any given point is ask myself what's being mirrored at me right now. So if there is a pattern that I see, is there something that I'm not paying attention to?
Yes.
And is there an issue that I'm not looking at internally?
Yeah.
Other than that, it's very difficult to extrapolate what's going on. Dare I say, a more collective level?
Yeah.
Because in full transparency, I am someone still who I'm very open-minded, but I'm also very careful. And
careful.
I let many things affect my cosmology in the way that I view the world. But I will not let any given session dictate what shapes that cosmology, because I don't fully know about the influence of any individual.
Yeah.
And when you brought up projection before, I think projection shows up in many different ways.
Yeah.
And something I'm also very good at is shooting myself in the foot. But in full transparency, when it comes to something like past life regression, while I deeply believe in the process, I believe that it is still possible for conscious interference to take place if someone is determined enough to look for confirmation bias of their own narrative, or to shape their external world by what they think will bolster it from the past.
Yeah.
I will never rule out that possibility. So when it comes to any time that we interact with the higher self or the subconscious in a session, and it comes forward with a message of something going on in the cosmos right now or on the earth, I will always allow for the possibility that there is some type of ego interference. Let's put it that way. Not even like a negative entity type of interference, but just ego. Like this is coming from a place of ego. So I do my best to not let that shape the way that I view the external world. But the patterns that I do look at are the ones of astrological placements. I think those are easier to trust in when you see the way that something may be appearing in someone's past life. So just also for clarification for everyone, I don't do past life readings. Past life reading is when someone tells you what your past life was. What I do is past life regression, where I use hypnosis to take someone to visit or revisit their own past life. And then they tell me what they're seeing. And based off of what they say, then I say, okay, well, let's explore this a little deeper.
So you're coaching them to understand it, like you're asking them helpful questions for their journey into the past to be meaningful and helpful.
Exactly.
For them to bring that meaning back into their lives.
So I'm more focused on the individual component and how to help this person in the best way that, I mean, I feel is right, or even what they're giving me and what they think is right. And trusting the process that they're going to get what they need, not necessarily what they want. Now, I believe that's the case still 99% of the time, but always have to allow for that 1% of the time that there is something conscious interfering and projecting something. But when it comes to, let's just say someone like me, I have my Saturn conjunct my midheaven in Sagittarius. So I look at my past lives and past lives that I've seen of my own where I may not have done the right thing and abused my power and not really acted responsibly with it. And how I apply that to this life now is, look, I think even this conversation is a prime example of that, where I could come on here saying all of the amazing things about past life regression in the world and all the cool things that I've seen with, for myself or with my clients and things that they've brought back, the stuff that would really sell it. But there's that deep sense of responsibility that comes up that says, is that the most responsible thing to do right now? And I don't think it is. Would it be the most personally beneficial? Yes, it would, because it can make it very lucrative.
Of course. I love your approach.
So it's those things that I look at, those patterns of, okay, this is usually what comes up when this happens. And there could be outliers because, of course, it's not an absolute. Nothing is an absolute.
So I hope you enjoyed that little look at Daniel's work, his experience and consciousness. In part 2, we're going to go even deeper as we talk more about the nature of consciousness from his perspective, how it might have changed a little bit. And it's as you can already tell, this is an ongoing conversation. In fact, we could have actually recorded 3, but in the end we just had to give up. But I know that we are going to be recording a 3rd, possibly a 4th in due course. So I hope you enjoyed today's. Join us tomorrow so that you can hear more about Daniel's experience. And Carl and I will catch you in a short while on another Live Moment show. Thanks for joining us today, and catch you another time. Bye for now.